Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaskar. You have stepped into a course that is going to change the way that you look at data. Not just how you analyze it, but also how you communicate it. My name is Nivid Desai. I serve as the Program Executive at Writing Studio IIT Gandhinagar. Welcome to Writing for Data Science. This course is at the intersection of analysis and communication. As all of us know, data analysis is not just about coding and models. It is about solving real-world problems. And that is exactly why every single thought that goes into solving those problems needs to be communicated. And not just to one audience, across multiple stakeholders. That is where this course comes in. This course prepares you with the foundations of writing, especially curated for data science. We will discuss audience analysis, critical thinking, logical reasoning, as well as storytelling that is native to data science. So join me on a journey at the intersection of numbers and narratives. I'll see you in class. Namaste, hello and welcome to Writing for Data Science. My name is Nivid Desai and we are on a journey to explore the interesting intersections between numbers and narratives. Today is yet another milestone in our journey. Not only the last class of this module, but also the last class of this course. We have looked at 4 different modules that have helped us build the foundations and some advanced knowledge of writing for data science. We first began with the introduction, then we moved on to audience analysis, then logical reasoning and critical thinking. And for a few lectures so far, we have looked at storytelling with data. And today, we are going to conclude the module on storytelling with a brief review of all that we have done and some discussion on where to go forward from here. Let's first recap our journey, what we learned in this module. This has been our journey through data storytelling. We first began, in a way, with audience understanding. All the way back in our module on audience analysis, we looked at how to tap into the audience's sensitivities, their preferences, and their reliable ways of looking at data and augment our communication to suit their needs. Then, coming back to this module, we looked at narrative structures and arcs. We saw that structures give a path for the story to follow, and arc gives it the emotional momentum. Then we saw the role of cognition and memory. How do people process stories? How do people remember stories? And why is it effective that when you communicate something through a story, it sticks and it has the impact that we need? We also looked at characters as an important part of story. We saw what are their roles and what are their dynamics. What do human characters do? What do non-human characters do? Moving on to a slightly advanced territory, we saw setting and context in storytelling. What is the physical universe within which your data story exists? And what are the different contextual lenses through which you would like to portray the story? All of them will end up enhancing the impact with which you communicate with your audience. Then, as techniques of storytelling, we saw analogies, examples, and scenarios. All 3 of them enriched our understanding of what tools are at our disposal when we tell a data story. Then, we talked about choosing the right data for the right story. We saw how the right story can communicate to a technical audience versus to a non-technical audience, and what kind of data would both of them prefer in terms of their similarities and differences. Then we learned about the Aristotelian trio, ethos, pathos, and logos, the persuasion mechanism that helps us convince our audience to be with us on our journey of proving something. And in the end, we boiled down that knowledge into an actual tool, an actual medium called pitching. We talked about pitching ideas with a clear purpose and how do we do that in a functional manner. This has been an enriching journey so far. We started from the foundations all the way, tracking our journey to an implementable model that can help us be better data storytellers. So, before we move forward, here's a quick reflection that I would like you to do. Write down one story or example that stayed with you from this module. Why did it stick with you? What was that one new idea that you still remember from our conversation throughout this module? It will help you realize what is that one new angle to your perspective that this discussion has added. Stick to it, embrace it, and ensure that you use it in your communication from this point forward. Now I want to discuss what are the real world applications of all that we have studied so far. I know that we looked at pitching as a real world application, but there are more than one ways in which a pitch can help you put your point across. So let me give you some examples of real world application for all the skills that we have learned, all the theory that we have gone through in this module. Let's talk about product design. If you want to explain user needs with empathy and data, storytelling and persuasion can be the right medium to communicate both the quantitative and the qualitative aspect of your product design. Then, if you are working within the space of policy and governance, whether in the public sector or in the private sector, shaping public opinion and decisions can be done through robust data analysis and effective data storytelling. If you are in academia and research, you can make complex insights accessible for your audience, for your students and peers, with a narrative bent of mind and a design that is augmented towards storytelling. Then, if you are an entrepreneur, you can pitch solutions and visions to investors, in fundraisers, and to your customers. Various stakeholders can come on board with your vision being communicated in a persuasive manner. If you are also working within journalism and advocacy, you can inform and move communities to act with the right kind of data and the right kind of story. These are all the different domains where real-world applications of data storytelling can be traced, However, I must emphasize and underline that this is not an exhaustive list. This is not where it begins and ends. If you find data storytelling to be applicable and relevant in any other field apart from the ones that I have managed to imagine, that is a valid use of data storytelling. That is an imminent and important use of data storytelling. If there's any other way that you are implementing it, do let me know. If there's any other way that you think that data storytelling has enhanced your communication, it will be a worthy addition in your skill set from this point forward. Here's a quick exercise. You can choose a domain: education, health, mobility, or finance. These are some examples. You can choose anything that you are interested in. And then think, what kind of data story could you tell that might influence action? All the things that we discussed about real world applications were about influencing action. So, what kind of a story could you tell from any domain that you are interested in that will for sure inspire action? The domains that I just shared with you were all general visions of how data storytelling can help us connect the theory that we have learned and the skills that we have developed to a real world application. However, I would also like to share with you some case studies from India where data storytelling and data narratives have actually brought about significant material change. Let's look at the first example pertaining to digital agriculture dashboards in Andhra Pradesh. By combining the satellite imagery, soil data, and rainfall trends, state dashboards are helping farmers choose better crops. The storytelling layer: data is shown in simple charts in Telugu through mobile apps, a direct story from soil to farmer. This is the kind of connection, the kind of comprehension between the core problem that the data solves and the target audience that it affects at large. So, the impact of storytelling, the impact of understanding audiences is imminent in the way that this case study plays out. The second example is of the Delhi bus route visualizer. Created by a data journalism team, this open access tool tells the story of underused routes and long wait times, which is backed by GPS data. It inspired route optimization pilots, and it also got coverage in prominent journalistic platforms like The Hindu and Scroll. This right here is a functional solution based on observation, and then setting it within a certain context that can drive the impact that is needed. The third example is based on Prayas Energy Group's electricity access reports. By combining household survey data with lived experiences from low income areas, the reports don't just say access improved, which is a reporting. They show how consistent power transformed the children's study time and the women's evening work. This storytelling approach shaped state electrification policies. You see how the characters, how the context, and how the real life impact, the human stories, have helped make a dent in the way that the data has been communicated. Here are some more examples. The Arogya Setu app launch, if you remember, it combined the health data with personal safety narratives. We needed to adhere to strong COVID 19 guidelines, and that was done by combining the data that impacts us with the personal safety guidelines that is communicated through narratives. Then there is the Swachh Bharat mission. The Swachh Bharat mission used numbers, visuals, as well as citizen stories for a national movement. It needed to inspire change from within us. If you remember, the logo of the Swachh Bharat mission is emblematic of Mahatma Gandhi, who said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." So, if it is a citizen movement, it needs to persuade the people to rise up from within and show up for the cause that has been demanded. So, these kinds of citizen stories help us connect with the people at large. Then there is the Digital India campaign. This is based on data driven success stories to build tech trust. We have seen technologies like the UPI and UIDAI, which have improved our lives significantly. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We see how these narrative communications have directly impacted our behavioral changes. The way that we transact with UPI is directly impacted by data driven success stories that has built our trust in the technology available to us. Then, in the end, let me give you a local example. Students from IIT Gandhinagar used storytelling to present water saving prototypes in the villages around our campus. This was done by the Water and Climate Laboratory at IIT Gandhinagar, and they wanted to communicate with the surrounding villages around the campus. And they did that not only through data, but through local contextual storytelling that will help them bridge the gap towards their target audience. Here's a quick exercise for your own reflection. Think about this phrase: the story I want to tell with data is, and then fill this sentence. However, you will have to be specific. You will have to be personal. What kind of storytelling would you employ with the data skills that you have learned in this course? Towards the end, I just want to reiterate that whether you are presenting your first internship project or launching your own app, the way you write and the way you tell your story shapes how your work is understood, supported, and remembered. A powerful data story doesn't just inform, it clarifies, it connects, and it inspires. Data doesn't move people, stories move people. In the end, I want to emphasize on writing for data science as a critical perspective, something that we have been on a journey to explore all throughout this course. What we have gained is a set of advanced tools with writing for data science. We talked about critical reasoning to separate signal from noise, narrative frameworks to organize insights, ethical clarity to write responsibly, audience empathy to make your work useful. All of these are critical skills that will enhance your communication as compared to somebody else who just looks at writing as a product, as a document. This will ensure that writing is not only a product but a perspective, a temperament for all of you who have joined us on this journey. No matter your domain, good writing will make you a better thinker, a better collaborator, and a more impactful data scientist. So, we have come to the end not only of this lecture, not only of this module, but also this course. Your journey as a data communicator begins now. Whether it is a slide, a pitch, or a policy brief, write clearly, write carefully, and write with courage. Stay curious, stay observant, stay human. Don't just analyze the world, change it, one story at a time. And with each story, you build the future that you believe in. That was it from my side for this lecture, for this module, and for this course. I'm Nivid Desai. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I hope that it was a worthwhile experience for you, and I hope that you will carry on this learning for your lifetime, not only in your career, but also in the way that you see and shape the world around you. Thank you so much. Namaskar.